The conference room on Station Kepler 442 was designed for comfort, at least by galactic standards. The ceiling stretched high enough to accommodate the tallest species, and the chairs adjusted to various body types. Daehyun sat at the polished table, his hands folded neatly in front of him. To his left sat Mirai, the scientist who had prepared all the trade data. To his right was Jiwoo, the security officer who accompanied them everywhere. Across from them sat Ambassador Krex of the Vortan hegemony. He was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with a crystalline exoskeleton that caught the light and scattered it in sharp angles. His species had conquered 14 star systems through military might alone. Next to him were 3 other delegates, each representing their own powerful civilizations. Daehyun was explaining Earth's position on mineral rights in the outer colonies. He spoke clearly and calmly the way he always did. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago, after finally achieving faster-than-light travel. They were still the new species, still learning the rules. Our proposal offers fair distribution, Daehyun said, sliding a datapad across the table. Both our peoples benefit from this arrangement. Krex didn't even look at the pad. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, which groaned under his weight. Fair? His voice was like grinding rocks. Humans speak of fairness as if they have earned a voice at this table. Daehyun's expression didn't change. We have as much right as any species here, right? Krex laughed, a harsh sound. You are children playing at politics. Your species is weak, slow to breed, fragile in body. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no real strength. On my world, humans would be prey animals. The other delegates shifted uncomfortably, but none spoke up. Jiwoo's jaw tightened, but she stayed quiet. This wasn't the first time they'd heard such things. Many of the older species viewed humans as inferior. Mirai cleared her throat. Perhaps we should focus on the trade agreement itself. Our analysis shows I am not interested in your analysis, little human. Krex stood up, his full height now on display. He walked around the table slowly, deliberately. Your species has a violent history. Wars, genocide, destruction of your own planet. And yet you come here pretending to be civilized. Daehyun stood as well, though he barely reached Krex's chest. Every species in this room has a violent past. The Vortans destroyed 2 colony worlds during your expansion period. The Thexians fought a civil war that lasted 3 centuries. We're not pretending to be anything. We're here to build a future. Krex moved closer to Mirai. He didn't touch her, but he loomed over her chair, his shadow falling across her face. Perhaps we should study humans more closely. Understand what makes you tick. I could arrange for some specimens to be collected. Your species is so fragile, it would be easy. That's when it happened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Not literally, of course, but every being present felt it. Daehyun's posture changed. It was subtle. His shoulders squared. His breathing slowed. His eyes, which had been warm in diplomatic moments before, became something else entirely. Cold, focused, calculating. When he spoke, his voice was different, lower, quieter, each word precise. Step away from her. Krex turned to face him, amused. Or what, little human? Daehyun didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You have 10 seconds to leave this room. The other delegates were already moving. The Thexian representative, an insectoid creature with compound eyes, scrambled toward the door. The Pelian delegate, usually slow and methodical, suddenly discovered speed. Even High Chancellor Vross, who had been observing from the corner, began backing toward the exit. Krex watched them go, confused. What is wrong with you all? This is one human. One weak, unarmed. 7 seconds, Daehyun said. Something in his eyes made Krex pause. The Vortan had faced down warriors from a dozen species. He had personally led ground assaults on fortified positions. He had never retreated from any opponent. But looking at Daehyun now, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Uncertainty. Daehyun didn't move. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't make threats. He simply stood there waiting, and somehow that was worse. There was a promise in his stillness. A guarantee that if Krex didn't leave, something terrible would happen. The exact nature of that terrible thing was unclear, which made it more frightening. This is ridiculous, Krex said, but he was already moving toward the door. I will file a complaint with the council. This behavior is unacceptable. 4 seconds, Daehyun said. Krex left. He told himself it was tactical, that there was no point arguing with an irrational being. But deep in his genetic memory, something ancient recognized the look in Daehyun's eyes. It was the look of a predator that had stopped pretending to be prey. The door slid shut. The room was silent except for the hum of the ventilation system. Jiwoo let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. What just happened? Daehyun blinked, and suddenly he was himself again. The tension left his shoulders. His eyes warmed. He looked confused. I'm not sure. He threatened you, Mirai. I couldn't let that stand. Mirai was staring at him. Daehyun, you didn't even raise your voice. Why did they run? I don't know, he admitted. I was angry, but I kept it controlled. I thought I was being professional. Jiwoo walked to the door and looked out. The corridor outside was empty. Every delegate had vanished, including the station security that usually lingered nearby. They didn't just leave the room. They left this entire section. Daehyun ran a hand through his hair. That makes no sense. Krex could break me in half without effort. The Thexians have acid spit. Frost has a neural disruption field. Why would they run from an unarmed human? I've heard stories, Jiwoo said slowly, from other security personnel, about how aliens react when humans get angry. I thought it was exaggeration. What kind of stories? Mirai asked. That they're afraid of us. Not just cautious or wary. Actually afraid. Jiwoo shook her head. It never made sense. We're not the strongest species. We're not the fastest or the toughest. We don't have natural weapons. But something about humans scares them. Daehyun looked at his hands. They were steady now, but a few minutes ago they had wanted to do violence. He had felt it. That ancient urge to protect his group at any cost. He had controlled it, channeled it into words and posture instead of action. But it had been there lurking beneath his civilized surface. We should report this, he said finally. The negotiations are clearly over. As they left the conference room, none of them noticed the security camera footage being copied and transmitted across the station's network. Within an hour, every species on Kepler 442 would see it. Within a day, it would spread to other stations, other worlds. The footage showed exactly what had happened. A human, barely restrained anger visible in every line of his body, making a room full of the galaxy's most powerful species flee in instinctive terror, and no one could explain why. The cafeteria was quieter than usual. Hyunwoo noticed it as soon as he entered. Normally, the space buzzed with conversation in a dozen languages, species mixing freely over meals. Today, the aliens clustered together on one side while the handful of humans sat alone on the other. He grabbed his tray and moved toward an empty table, trying not to think about it. He was a xenobiologist. His job was studying alien life, building bridges between species. The growing divide bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Dr. Hyunwoo, a voice called from behind him. He turned to see Chancellor Thex, one of the station's senior administrators. Thex was a Thexian, an avian species with iridescent feathers and sharp, intelligent eyes. The Chancellor had always been friendly, often stopping to discuss Hyunwoo's research. Chancellor, Hyunwoo greeted him. Would you like to join me? Thex's feathers ruffled, a sign of nervousness. Actually, I was hoping we could speak privately. In my office, perhaps? 20 minutes later, Hyunwoo sat across from Thex in a comfortable office filled with data crystals and old books. The Chancellor poured him something that resembled tea, though it smelled faintly of copper. I suppose you've heard about the incident, Thex began. With Daehyun? Yes, everyone has. Hyunwoo wrapped his hands around the warm cup. I still don't understand what happened. Krex is a Vortan warrior. Daehyun is a diplomat. Why would Krex run? Thex settled into his chair, feathers smoothing. That's why I asked you here. You study alien biology, yes? But have you ever truly studied human biology from a galactic perspective? I'm human. I know human biology. You know it from a human viewpoint. Let me show you something. Thex activated a holographic display. An image of a human face appeared, rotating slowly. Tell me, what do you see? A face, 2 eyes, nose, mouth. Standard human features. Now look at this. Another face appeared. Then another. A dozen different species, all rotating. What do all these species have in common? Hyunwoo studied them. Their eyes are on the sides of their heads, exactly. Prey animals have eyes on the sides to watch for predators. They sacrifice depth perception for a wider field of view. Now look at humans again. The human face reappeared. The eyes faced forward, both looking in the same direction. Forward-facing eyes. Thex said quietly. The mark of a predator. Every hunting species in galactic history has them. And humans have possibly the best binocular vision we've ever documented. Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his spine. That's just evolution. Humans needed depth perception for climbing trees, for tracking prey. Thex interrupted gently. Let me show you more. The display changed, showing footage from Earth, humans running. Not sprinting, but jogging steadily. Kilometer after kilometer. Most species are built for speed or strength, Thex explained. Quick bursts to escape predators or catch prey. But humans are endurance hunters. You can run for hours, days even. On Earth, your ancestors would chase animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. That's how we survived, Hyunwoo protested. We weren't strong enough to fight, so you became something worse, Thex said. Do you understand how that looks to us? A species that hunts by simply refusing to stop, by following and following until their prey dies of fatigue. In our horror stories, that's the monster, the thing that never stops coming. Hyunwoo wanted to argue, but the words stuck in his throat. Thex pulled up more data. Here's something else. Human damage tolerance. You can function with injuries that would kill most species. Broken bones, blood loss, internal damage. There are recorded cases of humans fighting with fatal wounds, surviving hours or days past what should be possible. We're tough. That's good, isn't it? It's terrifying. Thex's feathers ruffled again. Most species, when seriously injured, shut down. It's a survival mechanism. But humans, you keep going. Your adrenaline system, your pain tolerance, your redundant organs. You're built to take damage and continue. The display showed new footage. A human mining crew attacked by space pirates. Hyunwoo watched as the humans, outnumbered and outgunned, fought back with improvised weapons. Pipes, tools, chunks of metal. They should have surrendered. Instead, they attacked. The pirates' distress calls were included in the recording. Their words were translated at the bottom of the screen. They won't stop. We've stunned 3 of them and they got back up. What are these things? They're not retreating. Why aren't they retreating? One of them is laughing. He's injured and he's laughing at us. The footage ended with the pirates fleeing. The humans had won. Thex closed the display. That incident was classified for a reason. It scared people. The pirates were a known group, experienced fighters. They had better weapons, better armor, but they ran from humans who fought with pieces of scrap metal. We were defending ourselves, Hyunwoo said weakly. I know. That's what makes it worse. You weren't trying to be frightening. You were just being human. Thex leaned forward. Let me explain something about galactic history. Every species in the Council was once like you. Predatory, aggressive, territorial. But we all evolved past it. Thousands of years ago, we chose cooperation over violence. We literally bred the aggression out of our species. And humans haven't. Humans are still predators. Oh, you've built a civilization, developed ethics and laws and culture. But underneath, the instincts remain. When threatened, most species flee or submit. But humans, your stress response is aggression. You become more dangerous when cornered. Hyunwoo thought about Daehyun in that conference room. The way he had changed when Mirai was threatened. The cold focus in his eyes. The anger response, he said quietly. Yes. In most species, fear triggers escape. In humans, fear triggers fight. And you're very, very good at fighting. Your species spent hundreds of thousands of years perfecting it. Thex stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. We've studied human history. Your wars, your weapons, your strategies. You've turned violence into an art form. And even now, in your peaceful era, you train for it. Your sports, your games, your entertainment. So much of it involves simulated combat. We're trying to be better, Hyunwoo said. We've learned from our mistakes, I know. And that's why we let you join the council. Because you're trying. But you're the only species that still has to try. The rest of us don't have that urge anymore. We forgot what it's like, Thex turned back to him. When Daehyun got angry, every being in that room felt something ancient. A genetic memory of when we were prey and there were things that hunted us. For just a moment, they remembered what it's like to be afraid. So what now? Hyunwoo asked. Do we get kicked out? Quarantined back to Earth? No, but things are changing. Word is spreading. Right now, across this station, across the whole network, beings are learning something they never knew before. That humans are predators who chose to be peaceful. And choice is a fragile thing, Thex's communicator beeped. He glanced at it and his feathers went rigid. What is it? Hyunwoo asked. A human cargo ship has been seized by the Krell Dominion. They're holding the crew hostage. Thex looked at Hyunwoo with something like pity. The Krell are the galaxy's fiercest warriors. They've never lost a ground engagement, and they've just trapped 12 humans on one of their ships. Hyunwoo felt his stomach drop. We need to send negotiators. We will. But I fear it may be too late. Thex pulled up the ship's manifest. The captain is named Soman. The crew includes an engineer named Seojin and a medic named Hana. You think the Krell don't know about humans? I think they're about to learn. Thex closed the display. And I think the galaxy is about to learn something worse. What happens when you don't just anger a human, but you hurt someone they care about? Young-soo wiped down the counter of his small cafe, humming to himself. The morning rush was over, leaving him with a handful of customers scattered across the tables. He glanced at them and smiled. 3 Pelions in the corner, moving slowly as their species always did. A lone Thexian by the window, feathers occasionally ruffling. And near the door, a Vortan who kept glancing at Young-soo nervously. More coffee? Young-soo called out cheerfully. The Vortan flinched. No, I'm fine. Young-soo shrugged and poured himself a cup instead. He took a long drink, savoring the bitter taste. When he looked up, all the aliens were staring at him. What? He asked. That's poison, one of the Pelions said, pointing at the cup. Young-soo looked at his coffee. No, it's just dark roast. Little bit of sugar. The caffeine content in that beverage would stop my hearts, the Pelion continued. How are you drinking it casually? It's coffee. Humans drink it all the time. Young-soo took another sip just to prove his point. Helps us wake up. The aliens exchanged glances. The Thexian spoke up, voice uncertain. You consume poison to feel more alert? It's not poison to us. It's just a stimulant. Young-soo put down his cup, sensing he was making them uncomfortable. Look, different species process things differently. What's poison to you is breakfast to me. What else do you consume? The Vortan asked, leaning forward despite his obvious fear. Young-soo thought about it. Well, there's alcohol. That's technically a toxin, but we drink it socially. Oh, and capsaicin. That's the chemical in spicy peppers. It literally triggers pain receptors, but we think it tastes good. The Thexian's feathers stood on end. You eat pain? When you put it that way, it sounds weird. Young-soo laughed, but the aliens didn't join in. Seriously, it's normal for us. Humans have really adaptable digestive systems. We can eat almost anything. One of the Pelions stood abruptly. I should go. Thank you for the meal. The others followed quickly, leaving half-finished food on their tables. Young-soo watched them go, confused. Business had been strange lately. Customers came in curious but left unsettled. He couldn't figure out what he was doing wrong. Across the station, Yoonji was having a similar problem. She stood in front of her classroom, looking at the mix of young aliens who attended the station's school. Today's lesson was on comparative biology, a subject she usually loved teaching. So human evolution is pretty interesting, she began, pulling up a diagram of a human skeleton. We're bipedal, which means we walk on 2 legs. This freed up our hands for tool use. A young Thexian raised a wing. Teacher Yoonji, is it true humans can throw things accurately? Yes, very accurately. Human shoulder joints and hand-eye coordination evolved specifically for throwing. Our ancestors used it for hunting. Hunting? Another student, a small Pelion, looked worried. You killed other animals? Yoonji hesitated. Well, yes. Humans are omnivores. We ate meat and plants. The ability to throw meant we could hunt from a distance. Spears, rocks, whatever we had. She pulled up another image, this time of human musculature. See these muscles in the shoulder and arm? They're optimized for throwing with force and accuracy. No other species has quite this configuration. A Vortan student, larger than the others even as a child, spoke up. What about teeth? I heard humans have tearing teeth. Canines, yes. Yoonji showed a diagram of human teeth. 4 of them designed for tearing flesh. But we also have molars for grinding plants. That's what omnivore means. We adapted to eat whatever was available. The classroom had gone very quiet. Yoonji looked at her students and saw fear in their eyes. These were children, and she was scaring them. But humans don't hunt anymore, she added quickly. We farm, we grow food. Most humans never hurt another creature their whole lives. But you could? The young Thexian asked. If you wanted to? Yoonji didn't know how to answer that. I suppose. But we choose not to. That's what being civilized means. She moved on to the next slide, hoping to lighten the mood. Here's something cool. Humans have 2 kidneys, but we only need 1 to survive, and our liver can regenerate if damaged. We have redundant systems for lots of our organs. Why? The Pelion student asked. Evolution. It helped us survive injuries. If one kidney failed, the other kept working. If part of the liver was damaged, it could regrow. The Vortan student leaned back in his seat. So humans are built to survive damage. Like a warrior species. No, not warriors. Just survivors. But even as she said it, Yunji realized how it sounded. Humans were built to take damage and keep functioning. To other species, that probably did seem like a warrior's body. The rest of the class went poorly. Every fact she shared seemed to frighten her students more. When she mentioned human temperature tolerance, ranging from desert heat to Arctic cold, they looked horrified. When she explained human endurance, the ability to run for hours without stopping, several students asked to be excused. By the end, Yunji sat at her desk alone, wondering what she had done wrong. She had only told the truth about human biology, but the truth apparently was terrifying. In the station's council chambers, Counselor Vex was making a speech. He was a reptilian species, old and respected, and his words carried weight. The human situation has become untenable, he said, his forked tongue flickering. We cannot ignore what we have learned. They are predators, barely domesticated, living among peaceful species. It is a disaster waiting to happen. Several council members nodded. Others looked uncertain. What do you propose? High Chancellor Vross asked from his seat. Restrictions. Humans should be monitored, their movements tracked, perhaps confined to certain areas of the station. We must protect the other species. Protect them from what? A voice called out from the back. It was Vex. Humans have committed no crimes here. They follow our laws. What exactly are we protecting people from? From their nature, Vex hissed. You've seen the footage, Chancellor. You know what they are capable of. I know they are capable of anger like any being. I also know they are capable of control. Vex walked to the center of the chamber. Daehyun didn't attack anyone. He didn't even touch anyone. He got angry and everyone fled. That says more about us than it does about humans. They are dangerous, and so are Vortans. So are Krell. So are a dozen other species. We allow them here without restrictions, because they evolved past their violent phase. Humans haven't. Vex was quiet for a moment. No, they haven't, and perhaps that's what frightens you. They still have to choose peace every day. They still have to fight their instincts, and they do it anyway. The debate continued for hours. No decisions were made, but the divide was clear. Some species wanted humans controlled. Others defended them. And the humans themselves, scattered across the station, felt the tension growing. Daehyun heard about the council session from Jiwoo. They sat together in a quiet corridor, watching the stars through a viewport. They're afraid of us, he said quietly. Can you blame them? Jiwoo replied. After what happened? I didn't do anything. I just got angry. Maybe that's enough. Jiwoo turned to look at him. I've been thinking about it. About why they ran. And I think I understand now. Tell me. They forgot what it's like to be prey. Their species have been safe for so long they don't remember the fear. But we're still predators. We still have that edge. When you got angry, you reminded them, and they remembered fear for the first time in thousands of years. Daehyun looked at his hands again. So what do? We keep choosing peace. We keep proving we're more than our instincts. Jiwoo stood. And we hope it's enough. But hope was about to be tested. At that very moment, on a Krell military outpost, Captain Soman and her crew were being locked in a detention cell. And the Krell, confident in their strength, had no idea what they had just started. The detention bay smelled of metal and something sharp that hurt to breathe. Captain Soman sat on the cold floor, her back against the wall, counting her crew. 12 humans, all present, all still alive. That was something. The Krell had stopped their cargo ship 3 hours ago. No warning, no negotiation. Just a tractor beam and armed soldiers pouring through the airlocks. The Krell were massive beings, each standing over 7 feet tall with natural armor plating that covered their bodies like overlapping shields. They moved with the confidence of a species that had never lost a fight. Seo-jun, the ship's engineer, sat next to Soman. He was a quiet man, thin and unremarkable to look at. He had barely spoken since their capture. How are you holding up? Soman asked him. I'm fine, Captain. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking slightly. Across the cell, Hana, their medic, was checking on the others. She had a cut on her forehead from where a Krell had shoved her during the boarding. The blood had dried, but it made her look more dangerous than she was. The cell door opened with a harsh clang. 3 Krell soldiers entered, led by one wearing insignia that marked him as an officer. You are prisoners of the Krell Dominion, the officer announced. His voice was deep, translated by the universal comm system. You will work in our mining operations until your government pays ransom. If you resist, you will be punished. If you try to escape, you will be killed. Soman stood slowly. We're a civilian cargo ship. We have rights under galactic law. The officer laughed. You have no rights here, human. Your species is new, weak. You should be grateful we are only enslaving you and not mounting your heads as trophies. He gestured to his soldiers. Separate them. 5 to each work crew. The medical one goes to the medical bay. We may have use for her skills. The soldiers moved forward. Hana stepped back instinctively. No, I stay with my crew. You don't give orders here. A soldier grabbed her arm. That's when Seojin moved. He was across the cell in 3 steps, his hand locking onto the Krell soldier's wrist. His grip was strong enough that the soldier actually winced. Let her go, Seojin said quietly. The soldier looked at him with something like amusement. Then he swung his other arm, backhanding Seojin across the face. The engineer flew backward, hitting the wall hard enough to dent it. Salmon's hands clenched into fists. Every human in the cell tensed. The Krell didn't notice. They were too busy laughing. Weak, the officer said. This is what happens when you resist. But Seojin was already getting up. Blood ran from his nose and his left eye was swelling shut. He should have stayed down. Any rational being would have. Instead, he stood, wiped the blood from his face, and looked at the Krell soldier with an expression that made the laughter die. It wasn't anger in his eyes. It was calculation. Cold, careful assessment. Like he was measuring the soldier for a coffin. Take the medical human, the officer ordered, less certain now. The rest go to work crews. They dragged Hana away. She struggled but couldn't break free. The Krell were too strong. As they pulled her through the door, she looked back at her crew. At Seojin, and Seojin looked back with eyes that promised murder. The cell door closed. The humans were alone again. We need to do something, one of the crew members said. It was Taejin, young and scared. They're going to hurt her. Salman was thinking the same thing. The Krell viewed other species as inferior, as tools to be used. They wouldn't treat Hana well. We can't fight them, another crew member said. They're too strong, too armored. We don't need to be stronger, Seojin said. He was sitting again, but his shaking had stopped. We just need to be smarter. He looked around the cell, analyzing. The walls were reinforced metal. The door was electronic, heavily secured. But the hinges were exposed, and there was a maintenance panel in the corner. I can get us out, he said. But we have to be ready to move fast. And we have to be ready to hurt people. Soman met his eyes. How far are you willing to go? As far as needed. There was no hesitation in his voice. They took Hana. They threatened to kill us. I'm not letting that stand, the others nodded. Fear was being replaced by something else. Determination. Anger. The human capacity to turn terror into action. Seojun worked on the maintenance panel for 20 minutes. His hands, no longer shaking, moved with precision. He was an engineer. He understood systems, and every system had a weakness. The door clicked open. The humans moved into the corridor silently. There were no guards immediately visible. The Krell didn't think prisoners could escape, especially weak humans. They found Hana 2 levels down in a medical bay. She was strapped to a table while a Krell scientist examined her, taking samples. When she saw her crew enter, her eyes went wide. The Krell scientist turned. How did you? Seojin hit him with a metal pipe he'd taken from the maintenance shaft. Not enough to kill, but enough to knock the scientist unconscious. The humans freed Hana. Are you okay? Soman asked. I am now. Hana rubbed her wrists where the straps had been. But they'll know we're out. They'll come for us. Let them come, Seojin said. He was holding the pipe like he knew how to use it. Alarms started blaring. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors. The Krell were coming. What happened next would later be studied by military strategists across the galaxy. 12 unarmed humans against a fully armed Krell military outpost. By every tactical assessment, the humans should have been recaptured or killed within minutes. But tactics didn't account for human psychology. The Krell soldiers rounded the corner expecting to see frightened prisoners. Instead, they saw 12 humans standing in formation, holding improvised weapons. Pipes, medical tools, anything they could grab. And the look in their eyes stopped the soldiers cold. These weren't prisoners anymore. These were predators. The fight was brutal and short. The humans didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like survivors. Every move was efficient, aimed at weak points. Eyes, joints, gaps in armor. They didn't care about honor or fair fighting. They cared about winning. Seojin fought with the calm focus of someone who had decided that survival meant violence. When a Krell soldier grabbed him, he didn't try to break free. Instead, he went with the motion, using the soldier's own strength against him, driving his improvised weapon into the gap between armor plates. Soman coordinated them with hand signals. No words needed. Humans had been pack hunters for hundreds of thousands of years. The instinct was still there. Within 5 minutes, 8 Krell soldiers lay unconscious or groaning on the floor. The humans stood over them, breathing hard, covered in their own blood and some of the aliens. War leader Krell arrived with reinforcements. He was the outpost commander, a veteran of 30 campaigns. He had expected to find dead humans. Instead, he found his soldiers defeated. He looked at Soman. She was bleeding from a dozen cuts, her uniform torn. But she was standing, and her eyes held something he recognized from ancient Krell history. The look of a warrior who had accepted death and therefore had nothing to lose. "You cannot win," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We don't need to win," Soman replied. "We just need to make sure you regret starting this." Krell had led warriors into battle against species renowned for their fighting ability. He had faced down armed opponents, desperate rebels, even wildlife on death worlds. But looking at these humans, injured and outnumbered, he felt something his species had bred out centuries ago. Doubt. "Let us go," Soman continued. "Let us take our ship and leave. Or keep fighting and learn why humans survived every predator on our world that was bigger than us." Krell looked at his fallen soldiers, then at the humans, then at Seojin, who was staring at him with the cold eyes of someone planning his next move. He made a decision he would be questioned about for the rest of his career. "Take your ship," he said. "Leave this outpost. If you return, we will not be merciful." The humans walked to their ship. Every Krell soldier they passed stepped aside. Not because they were ordered to, because instinct told them to move away from the predators. On the bridge of their cargo ship, Soman initiated departure. Her hands were steady on the controls. "Captain," Taejin said quietly. "What just happened?" "We survived," Soman replied. But across the outpost, footage of the confrontation was already being uploaded to the Galactic Network. Within hours, every species in the Council would see it. Humans, unarmed and outnumbered, making the Krell Dominion's warriors retreat. And the galaxy's fear of humans would evolve into something else entirely. The Galactic Council chamber was packed. Every seat was filled and more beings stood along the walls. This was an emergency session, called within hours of the Krell incident. The air was tense, electric with fear and anger. Daehyun sat in the human delegation section with Jiwoo and Mirai. Behind them sat Hyunwoo, Soman and her crew, even Youngsu and Yoonji. Every human on Station Kepler 442 had been called to attend. High Chancellor Vross called the session to order. His insectoid features were unreadable, but his voice was grave. "We are here to address what the other species are calling the human question. In the past week, we have witnessed 2 incidents that have shaken the foundations of our council. We must decide how to proceed." Counselor Vex stood immediately. "The answer is clear. Humans are too dangerous to remain integrated with peaceful species. I propose immediate restrictions." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Daehyun felt Jiwoo tense beside him. Vex continued, his voice rising. "Let us review the evidence. Humans are predators who have barely evolved past their violent nature. Their biology is designed for hunting and killing. Their culture glorifies violence. They even create entertainment based on combat and warfare." He activated a holographic display. Images filled the air. Human boxing matches, mixed martial arts, historical battle footage, action movies with explosions and gunfights, horror films with monsters and blood. "This is what humans watch for fun," Vex declared. "Violence is entertainment. What peaceful species does this?" More murmurs, more fearful glances toward the human section. "And their history," Vex went on. "Thousands of years of warfare, genocide, weapons of mass destruction. They nearly destroyed their own planet multiple times. These are facts." Ambassador Krex stood. Daehyun was surprised to see him. After their confrontation, he expected Krex to avoid humans entirely. "I supported Counselor Vex's position," Krex said. "After my encounter with the human diplomat, I believed humans were too volatile, too dangerous. But I have been reviewing our own history, the Vortan history. He pulled up images of his own species, ancient footage of Vortan warfare, cities burning, weapons that made human technology look primitive. We did the same, Craig said quietly. Worse, perhaps. We fought civil wars that lasted centuries. We developed weapons that could crack planets. We committed atrocities that still haunt our cultural memory. But we evolved past it. We chose peace. We forgot what we were. He turned to face Daehyun directly. When I threatened your crew member, you became what we used to be. And it terrified me because I had forgotten that feeling. The readiness for violence. The willingness to die protecting your pack. We bred it out of ourselves so long ago that encountering it again was like facing a ghost. Chancellor Thex stood. May I speak? Frost nodded. I have studied humanity extensively, Thex began, and Counselor Vex is correct about many things. Humans are predators. They do have violent tendencies. Their history is bloody, but he misses the crucial point. Thex walked to the center of the chamber. Humans are the only species in this room who still have to choose peace. Every single day. Every human carries the capacity for violence in their genes, and every human decides not to use it. They teach their children not to hit, not to hurt, not to take what they want by force, because they still feel those urges. He pulled up different images. Human children being taught to share, humans helping other species, human aid workers on disaster worlds, human doctors treating alien patients. They are predators who chose to become caregivers, hunters who decided to be healers, warriors who selected peace, not because it is easy for them, but because it is right. Daehyun felt something shift in the room. The fear was still there, but something else was emerging. Understanding perhaps Vex wasn't finished. Beautiful words, Chancellor. But what about the Krell incident? 12 humans defeated armed Krell soldiers. Humans who fought without mercy, without hesitation. Is this the peaceful species you describe? This time someone stood. She walked to the center of the chamber and every eye followed her. The cuts on her face had been treated, but the scars remained. You're right, she said. We fought without mercy. We hurt people, and I would do it again. Gasps echoed through the chamber. They kidnapped us, Soman continued. They threatened to enslave us, to kill us. They took our medic away to experiment on her. What would your species do in that situation? She looked around the room. Most of you would have submitted, waited for rescue, hoped for mercy. But humans don't wait to be saved. We save ourselves. That's how we survived on Earth. That's how we survived in space. And that's how we survived the Krell. You could have killed them, Vex said. You had the opportunity. We could have. We chose not to. Soman's voice was firm. That's the difference. We had the capacity for lethal force and we still chose restraint. Even while fighting for our lives, we pulled our punches. We disabled, we didn't destroy. Daehyun stood. It was time. He walked to join Soman in the center. May I address the council? He asked. Ross gestured his approval. Daehyun looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of dozens of species. You're all afraid of us. I understand that now. We remind you of what you used to be and you worked hard to forget that past. But let me tell you what I see when I look at this council. He pointed to the Vortan section. I see a species that conquered 14 systems through military force. You killed billions before you found peace. He pointed to the Thexians. I see a species that fought a 3-century civil war. Your own population was reduced by 70% before you stopped. He pointed to the Pelians. I see a species that practiced ritual combat to the death for leadership. You only stopped 2,000 years ago. Species after species, Daehyun pointed out their violent pasts. Not to shame them, but to make a point. Every species here has blood in their history, he said. Every single one. You all did terrible things before you evolved past it. But you did evolve. You changed. You became better. And now you've forgotten what it cost. He took a breath. Humans remember. We look at our history and we feel shame. We teach our children about our wars so they won't repeat them. We carry the weight of what we were because it reminds us to be better. You ask why we watch violence in our entertainment? Because we're still learning to channel those instincts safely. You ask why we have so many rules about not hurting others? Because we still feel the urge and we need the reminder. His voice grew stronger. You say we're predators. You're right. But we're predators who chose to become something else. Not because it's in our nature, but because it's our choice. And choice is everything. Pretty speech, Vex said. But choice is fragile. What happens when humans choose violence? Then we would be like everyone else in this room once was, Daehyun replied. The difference is we know that about ourselves. We're not pretending we're something we're not. We're not hiding from our nature. We're controlling it, Krek stood again. I formally withdraw my support for restrictions on humans. Instead, I propose recognition of their unique position. Explain, Vross said. Humans understand violence in a way we no longer do. They remember what it means to be both predator and prey. This makes them valuable, not dangerous. Krex pulled up a star chart. Our borders are peaceful because everyone has forgotten how to truly fight. But there are threats in the galaxy. Pirates. Hostile species beyond our borders. When diplomacy fails, we have no answer because we've forgotten warfare. He looked at Daehyun. Humans haven't forgotten. They could be our answer. Our last resort when all peaceful options fail. You want to make them warriors? Vex hissed. No, Krex replied. I want to make them peacekeepers. Because they understand the cost of war better than any of us. Chancellor Thex nodded. I second this proposal. But with additions. Humans should also lead our conflict resolution teams. They should teach diplomacy and de-escalation, not because they're peaceful by nature, but because they work so hard to be peaceful. They can teach others what they've learned. The debate continued for hours. Proposals and counter-proposals. Arguments and rebuttals. But slowly a consensus formed. Finally, Vross called for a vote. The proposal is this. Humans will be granted full council membership without restrictions. In exchange, they will serve in two capacities. First, as military advisors and peacekeepers for situations requiring defensive force. Second, as diplomats and counselors for conflict resolution. All in favor? Hands, claws, tentacles, and wings rose across the chamber. Not everyone voted yes. Vex and his supporters abstained. But the majority was clear. The motion passes, Vross announced. Daehyun felt Jiwoo's hand on his shoulder. Mirai was smiling. Around them, the other humans looked stunned. They had been accepted. Not despite their nature, but because of it. Later that evening, Daehyun, Jiwoo, and Mirai sat in Youngsu's cafe. The owner had insisted on celebrating, offering free food and drinks. A few aliens had even joined them, tentatively at first, then more comfortably. A young Thexian approached their table. Her feathers were smooth, a sign she wasn't afraid. Excuse me, she said. I heard something about humans. That you can befriend anything. Is it true? Jiwoo laughed. It was a warm sound full of genuine joy. Well, we try. We bonded with wolves tens of thousands of years ago and turned them into